Telelingüística.
Hello and welcome. This is going to be a simple one. So for this video on basic Spanish phonology, I am going to cover the phonology of the R and the double R. These are quite simple. Now, at the end of the video, I'm also going to do a short little demonstration on how to do the trill. So there's two sounds that we're going to be discussing mainly. Well, there's three, but the two main ones are the flap, ra, and the other one is the trill, ra. And ra is one that a lot of individuals struggle with, but there's an easy way to produce the sound for most people, and I'm going to show you how that is done. So first, I'm going to begin with the following. This sound, so this is the single R, many times referred to as R, and this is the double R, many times referred to as doble R. Both of these can be trills, so it can be ra, ra. So these are supposed to look the same. This one's just a little longer. So that's the trill, ra. Now, where do we find the trill with this letter? Whenever it's a single, the trill will be in initial position. So if this happens to be the first letter of the word, right? For example, rojo, rosa, Roberto. So it's this one. That's going to be the trill. Notice this is not a trill, so don't do a trill here. All right. Now, when is the double R a trill? The double R is always a trill, but you will only find it between vowels. So we will have the following. Perro, perra, right? So the double R is only going to be between vowels. It will never be in the beginning of a sentence, beginning of a word or at the end of the word as far as spelling norms. It will never be next to a consonant within a word. So it's only between vowels, Whereas the single R can be in, well, any environment. But the difference is this. Let me erase these, and I was going to use those as examples for something else. Well, okay, let me do the following. So we have rojo, right? I said that was a trill. But after a nasal, it's also going to be a trill. So let's say Enrique. Right? This is going to be a trill. This is why if you're familiar with Toyota models, Toyota makes a Camry. Well, don't be surprised if Spanish speakers pronounce this as a trill and say Camry, un Camry de Toyota. Right? You might hear somebody use a more anglicized pronunciation. They might say, es un Camry. All right. Or you might hear, es un Camry. Well, it's interesting, right? In the comments, you can put whatever you have heard, but it's very common to say Camry. Why? Because it's after a nasal. So just remember, nasals are those sounds where air comes out of the nose, such as N, M, or the ñ in Spanish. Now that we know where the single R is a trill sound, let's see where it's not a trill sound. So we will have after consonants or right next to consonants. So for example, brazo, or if you go to Spain, brazo, right? Just the Z, different pronunciation. I'll cover that in another video. But this is one example. Or at the end, for example, all verbs. So comer, right? We have this here. Ra, comer. That's another example. Or between vowels. And this is why I was going to use those other words that I accidentally erased. So we have pero, pera. So this is, except, but, just B-U-T, right? And pera, this is a pear, right? It's just a fruit. But notice that if I were to spell it with a double R, the double R, this would be a trill. So this would be a trill, this would be a flap. So the flap phonetically, we are going to spell this way. So we would have pero, pera, perro, perra. Right? Pero, perro, pera, perra. And these sounds are different phonemes. So if you interchange them, you will change the meaning. So these bottom ones mean dog. So these are canines, right? So just a dog, general dog, or it could be a male depending on context. And here you would have a female dog, for example, versus a fruit or, butt. So, you eat this and you take care and take this one out for walks. Big difference. I'm just saying. All right. And that's really it, except for one more thing. And that is that it is physically impossible to produce a trill, right, that famous R sound, r, after an S. So if you have that fricative, that alveolar fricative, actually it doesn't matter if it's S or Z, that alveolar fricative, but let's just focus on S for now. It will be physically impossible to produce a trill, therefore we will have this other sound, which is a retroflex sound. So a word, for example, like this one, this would be rosas, roses. If we were to say las rosas, notice I have to pause. If I do not, one of two things is going to happen. One, I just drop the S, so we ignore the S, and we will end up saying the following. Las rosas. Which works. And I would say this is probably one of the most common things to do. So, las rosas, right? The flowers. So it is plural, but we drop the S because it's impossible to produce the trill, right after an S. So in anticipation, that happens. It's just something that happens naturally. Nobody thinks about it. It's like, I'm going to end with an S, and the next sound's going to be a trill. I should probably drop the S. No. This does not happen in anybody's mind. Not at all. It just happens. So, las rosas. No, it's not even subconscious. It just happens. I don't know why people are like, it must be your subconscious. Oh, well, this is... No, it does not. So, that is one option. The other thing that can happen, too, is we do the following. Right here. Las rosas. So, las rosas. And the S isn't really sounded very much, so it's probably just going to be las rosas. Las rosas de color rojo. Or versus las rosas de color rojo. Right? That's what you're going to have. So those are the three sounds that the single R will produce in the Spanish language. Just keep in mind that this one right here is an allophone. It's not going to change the meaning. That's what you produce right after that alveolar fricative. Right? So now that we know the spelling norms, this is going to sound like a trill in the beginning of the word or after a nasal. This, every other situation, and this will only occur after an S. The double R you will only encounter between vowels, and it will always be a trill. So the question now is, how do you produce the trill? Well, let's pretend these are your teeth. Horrible, right? So this is the top view, just a top view of the mouth. Your tongue, and I'm going to put a little line here. This is your alveolar region. If you have ever consumed certain cereals and it tears that part up, that's what gets torn up. But your tongue just comes and lightly creates a seal right here and right here. That's all that happens, right? And the tip of the tongue just sits right here, softly. So here it's very soft. Here it creates a seal, right? So your tongue, imagine this is your tongue, and these are your teeth. It's just like this, and then alveolar area, it's barely touching, right? Lightly. And what ends up happening here is an effect very similar to a reed. So if you have ever played a clarinet or a saxophone, notice that you don't physically move the reed up and down. You're just blowing air, a steady stream of air, and that makes the reed vibrate. And it's because of that change in pressure. So what is happening in your mouth? There's an internal and external cavity. So you have, let's see, say this is a teeth, alveolar region, palate, all right, this good stuff. So your tongue is here creating that seal, right? And that's not actually how a tongue looks. That's just an example. So as you start blowing air, so air is going to start coming in through here. Pressure is going to build up in this area. And eventually it's going to be expelled and it will go through here. So once that happens, what will occur, let me try to make a better picture, just a larger one. So if these are your teeth, oh, vampire. All right, teeth are probably not going to be the sharp, but let's just say. So what will happen is the following. Your tongue is just going to sit here, and as the pressure builds up on the inside, it'll start vibrating back and forth. So just do that. Now, I mean, that's a simple explanation, right? Pretty simple. You should all be able to do it. If you struggle with the sound and you're wondering how to practice, it's quite simple. You can get a toy car, just like we all did, and just play with it. That's how most of us learn how to trill. I'm kidding. It's funnier in my head, I understand, but it's not that complicated. Well, for some people, it's just going to be difficult. But for most people can produce the sound. Let's just say you're coming from English. Just start by producing the TH in the word the. So it's going to be that dental fricative, that voiced dental fricative. That's it. Just do that in the beginning. And then what you're going to do is you're just going to move your tongue back. So sort of up and back. So start with once you start moving your tongue just lightly, don't put much pressure, and it hits that alveolar region, it should start vibrating on its own. So if I were to use the shadow here for the pencil, you're just going to begin down here. So, and then just move it. So, and then move it back. Once you get to here, you should start trilling. And that's the way it goes. So just practice that. Just TH. And then just pull the tongue back and up. And that's it. And then once you can do it on command, then just practice. Rojo. Rojo. Rosa. 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 And then just keep practicing. So that is the simplest way I can explain on how to produce that Spanish trill. That being said, I hope this was helpful. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.
Telelingüística.